When on 28 February 2026, the United States and Israel attacked Iran, one of the first groups that came to President Donald Trump's mind was the Kurds. Yet, until Trump announced the peace deal on June 14, he continuously accused the Kurds of stealing the weapons he supposedly sent to the Iranians to fight the regime. Did the Kurds really steal the weapons? And why didn't they join the war? Wasn't the war a golden opportunity for them to exploit it, as the Kurds did in Iraq in 1991 following the US-led Operation Desert Storm? Well, the reality is far more complex, and there are uncomfortable truths we must face. First, let's take a moment to reflect on the very early days of the war. In the White House Situation Room, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had reportedly pitched Trump on a vision of regime change in Iran, including the idea that the Kurdish fighters could help open a ground front from the Iraqi Kurdistan region. Soon after the war began, Trump called two Iraqi Kurdish leaders, Masoud Barzani of the KDP and Bafel Talabani of the PUK. The logic was simple for Trump, but dangerous for the Kurds. Of course, the Kurdistan region itself cannot topple the Iranian regime. It has nothing to do with the war either, but its geography matters for two key reasons. First, Iranian Kurdish parties are based in Iraqi Kurdistan. Second, the Kurdistan region shares over 400 kilometers of mountainous border with Iran, with 3 main official crossings and several smaller local points. So Trump was testing whether the Kurds could become the ground force of regime change in Iran, as they were in Iraq in 2003 and the war on ISIS in 2014. Historically, the Kurdish movements have often used regional wars to create political space. The Shah's regime supported Mullah Mustafa Barzani until the Algiers Agreement in 1975. During the Iran-Iraq War, Saddam Hussein's Iraq courted Iranian Kurdish groups as leverage against Tehran, while Iran backed Iraqi Kurdish forces against Saddam. In the 1980s and 1990s, Syria supported the PKK against Turkey and also backed Iraqi Kurdish groups against Baghdad. For liberation movements and insurgents, regional rivalry has often been both an opportunity and a trap. The biggest Kurdish gains have usually come after regional crisis. This is what Kurdish history tells us in Iraq as well as in Syria. Therefore, Iranian Kurdish parties also believed that the new war could open an opportunity. In fact, in 2015, Iranian Kurdish groups, mainly the KDPI and Komala factions, revived the armed struggle under what the KDPI called Rasan, or revival, after roughly 2 decades of military inaction. They believed regional change and the rise of Trump administration could create a new opportunity. But the guerrilla warfare had changed, albeit to their disadvantage for several organizational and technological reasons. Many of the cadres had spent years in exile, camps, or Europe. There was also a disconnect between them and the wider Kurdish youth within the country. Their military networks were weaker than in the 1980s. PJAK, which is ideologically linked to the PKK tradition, had more youthful energy, but it also faced the reality of Iran's technological warfare advancement. Despite all that, when the US and Israel attacked Iran, some Kurdish groups were ready to join. Iranian Kurdish groups had been training and waiting for signs of a serious American-Israeli plan. But they also understood the central problem. Airstrikes alone do not make a revolution, and they do not bring regime change. So, the Kurdish leadership soon understood that without a clear plan, heavy weapons, air protection, and political guarantees, a Kurdish move into Iran could become a massacre, not a liberation campaign. During the war, Trump also understood regime change might not be possible. So he needed a scapegoat. This is where Trump's accusation that Kurds stole the arms he sent entered. He claimed the United States had sent guns and ammunition through the Kurds for Iranian protesters. But the Kurds kept, he said. He was very disappointed, adding that the Kurds take. But this accusation was unfair and unclear. Which Kurds? Iraqi Kurds, Iranian Kurds, the KDP, the PUK, KDPI, Kamal Chomani, which one? Trump did not say much, simply because he did not have much to say. The Kurdish political and armed groups I have spoken to deny receiving such arms. But what made Trump's allegation more complicated was Bafel Taliban's appearance on Piers Morgan's show. He denied that the weapons were stolen in Soleimani, while indirectly pointing to the KDP. It may be true that some weapons you sent were stored in Erbil, which has nothing to do with the Iranian Kurdish groups. On another side, Trump first appeared open to Kurdish involvement, saying it would be wonderful if Iranian Kurds entered the fight. Days later, he said that the United States was not looking for the Kurds to join in. What we know about Kurdish preparation is that at the beginning of the war, they had bought a large number of pickup trucks and light weapons, although we could not confirm where they had obtained them. There were also contacts with the Americans suggesting possible involvement. The Iranian Kurdish parties organized themselves in detail and were ready, but they were waiting for a green light from Washington. Apparently, under pressure from Turkey, the Americans changed their position and prevented such a scenario from taking place. In a serious war scenario, several Kurdish parties could have joined. Israel pushed the idea of regime change, but the United States and Israel did not provide the Kurdish parties with the protection needed for such a gamble. Iran understood this discrepancy very well. They started threats and strikes on both Kurdish Iranian groups and the Kurdistan region. Iranian officials had clearly told the Kurdish leadership in Iraq that if the Kurds entered the war, their security, oil and gas infrastructure, and economy would be completely destroyed. This threat forced the Iraqi Kurds to completely stay away from the war. The Iranian Kurdish parties also remembered 1979. After the Iranian Revolution, Kurdish parties demanded autonomy and democratic recognition. Khomeini answered with war, declaring jihad against Kurdish political groups and militias. The Kurds fought bravely, but they faced a state with an army, revolutionary guards, prisons, courts, and artillery. Iran in 2026 is far more capable than Iran in 1979, with missiles, drones, proxies, decades of counter-insurgency experience. The Kurdish parties today are far weaker than they were then. The lesson for the Kurds in Iran was harsh but real. Military defeat is not only a battlefield loss, it can destroy cities, families, infrastructure, and political confidence for years to come. The US has now signed a memorandum of understanding with the Iranians in which neither the protesters' aspirations nor the democratic aspirations of Iranian peoples are included. The war that was decided in the Situation Room to destroy the Iranian regime, it seems, ends with the regime being re-legitimized for years. So the truth is that the Kurds did not steal America's weapons. They rather refused to be handed a suicide mission.